Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the RAS Project, a podcast covering no bullshit, 100% real, raw, and unfiltered rags to riches stories from amazing human beings around the world with emphasis on life, personal development, family, tech, and marketing. Of course, I am your host, Ivan Tummelkov, and I'll be joined with my sidekick, Courtney Turner, here shortly in a little bit. I want to give you guys a heads up on a couple of things. So we are streaming live on LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, YouTube, Periscope, and Twitch at the moment. Send us a text message to 314-916-4875. SMS text messages only. And really excited this morning to talk about this specific topic. But before we dive into it, a couple other things that I wanted to mention too. So if you notice, I'm sporting a new hat. That is the limited edition I Am Triumph hat that is being released, and I've already shipped out a few of these. If you'd like to get one of these for yourself, message me, contact me, email me, and I'd be more than happy to get one out to you. I hope you all are having an amazing Monday. I hope you had an amazing weekend. I know things have been crazy this past week here in St. Louis. We've been swamped with snowpocalypse, and that included about a foot of snow in some parts, but that is actually slowly moving away now, so I'm pretty excited about that. Things are warming up. I think we're supposed to see some 60-degree weather this week. And with that being said, I want to go ahead and bring in Courtney, have her join me here on stage. Good morning, Courtney. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing good. I was just telling the audience a couple things about being live, limited edition hat, which, by the way, is making its rounds now. And, of course, my new SMS number as well. People can reach out and connect. How was your weekend? Did you do anything fun?
It was good. I feel like it was pretty busy.
Pretty busy, yeah. I know you got a lot of things going on. You're working on a lot of different projects. And for those of you that don't know about Courtney, make sure you check out her website, CourtneyTurner.com. She has a podcast, the Courtney Turner Podcast, that is literally skyrocketing at this point. She has some controversial discussions around psychology, fitness, politics, and we'll actually get a little bit into that later in the show. But so awesome, yeah. I was telling everybody. So last week felt like I was swarmed under some snow, and this week we're like thawing out, as they say here in the Midwest. So I'm pretty excited. In fact, I was chatting with my brother-in-law on Facebook, and he's like, yeah, it's going to be 60 degrees on Tuesday. Thinking about golfing. And I'm like, dude, I haven't golfed in like 8 months. I think at this point I might kill somebody with a golf club, so I might have to take it easy on that one. And the challenge with me, that is the reality of it, honestly. I'm not good of a golfer, that if I haven't played in 6 to 8 months now, that, I might want to take it slow if I head out to the fairway, because I might throw a club at somebody. So, knowing me, but so I'm pretty excited. Things are warming up. I feel like, month of February was like, winter decided to make a pit stop here in the Midwest all of a sudden, and it was just like 2 weeks of like crazy weather. I think we even had 0 temperatures on a couple of days. It was so cold. I mean, so cold that I don't think I've ever actually experienced my car not starting because it's been so cold outside. Wow. And the weekend that we traveled was so cold that literally my car was cranking a few times just to get it started because it was so cold outside. And by the way, like I don't know if I can handle that kind of cold. That's way too cold for me. So,
I went to school in that kind of cold. It was upstate New York, and it snowed through graduation, and and I used to ski, so definitely
really. Yeah. Didn't know that. Did not know that. So when was the last time that you skied?
I haven't skied in a few years, but as a kid, I was actually on the racing team. Yeah, I used to
Wow.
ski. Yeah, I love skiing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So are you thinking about doing some more of it this year,
I
next year,
would love
soon?
to. I'm leaving the end of this weekend. Like the end of this week, I'm
Hmm.
traveling, and then I'm going to travel for a little bit. And then I'm hoping that maybe end of March, before the ski season ends, I can do one trip before I'll probably end up moving. And at that point,
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
be further away. Although a lot of times when you're further away, then you actually end up
Hmm.
doing it. It's like the people who live at the beach never see the beach, whereas like people who live nowhere near a beach, they take vacations and they go to a beach. They end
Right.
up sometimes seeing more of it than the people who live right there. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll force me to make more concerted effort to do ski trips, but I feel like I'm so
Exactly.
close to it now, and I really haven't. It's like once every few years I get to go. But
Yeah, yeah. And I know me and you were talking offline just to share with viewers and listeners that first of all, I didn't know that you like skiing. So that's amazing because there's not a lot of people that like that. But now living in warmer climates, and I know you're thinking about moving too, but I know you mentioned that you actually like the season changes, right?
I do. I really miss it. And I never thought I'd say that. I have rainouts, so I don't
Hmm.
handle cold very well. So for those who don't know, rainouts, it's where the capillaries in the extremities, they stiffen.
Hmm.
So my fingers and my toes might go numb. They'll turn white, and I actually lose feeling in them when it gets cold. It doesn't even have to be that cold for it to happen, but certainly the cold does not help. So I don't do all that well with cold.
Yeah,
Um, but I am, I feel like the fact that there really isn't much variance in the seasons affects your circadian rhythm. And I do kind of miss that like cyclical element of
yeah,
nature.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I actually think it's very important. I think human beings are wired for it. I mean, obviously there are people who live,
yeah,
here who thrive
yeah.
very well here, but I kind of miss it. I miss seeing the foliage. I miss, having snow fall every now and then. And yeah, there's something about the air that changes. So
I agree with that. And actually, coming to think of it, we've had discussions over the last couple of years with my wife about potentially moving to warmer climates, and the more we kind of thought about it, and the reason I don't think we've made that happen as of yet is because we would miss a white Christmas. Because let's face it, I mean, you don't always get, at least in the Midwest, a white Christmas, but the probability of getting one as opposed to living down south is much higher. Living in the Midwest or like upstate, north,
sure.
right? Because of snow, and I think that's just one of those things that when the holidays come around, it's like it'd be awesome to have a white Christmas. And if I lived down south, sure, I would love the beach, but I've also heard people say I get burnt on the beach. Like you can only see so much sand for a
Yeah.
long period of time, and then you get burnt out. I'm like, wait, is that really true? Like,
It's not that I get burnt out. I mean, like I'm looking at the ocean now. It's always
yeah,
beautiful. It never gets old. But what does get old is not having that cyclical seasonal change.
yeah,
There's something about like, oh, fall is coming, and you prepare for it, and there's a different experience of time. I think when
sure,
it's the same. I mean, here we have a slight variance, but for the most part, like it doesn't really drop too much below 60. Maybe at
right,
night, but during the day, it's maybe we'll have a couple of like 55, and it's still sunny, and certainly in Santa Monica is a little colder than the rest of LA, but you don't have that those changes, and I think that that is more what I miss. It's not that the beach gets old. It's not that the magnificence and the you know uh the expansiveness of the ocean is ever like stale, or that
right.
sunsets are ever boring. It's always incredibly beautiful. But I think it's more just that when it is the same day to day, time feels different. You just don't have that sense of like, oh, like the winter's coming, oh, fall is coming.
Sure.
It changes your experience of time. So
Yeah. No, I think, that's one of the things that I've thought about is, now with everything that's happening, in 2021 with my life, family and business also,
Yeah.
has really made me think bigger and bigger. And so, one of the things that I would probably like to do eventually is just to have a home or a place to stay or maybe even
Yeah.
live year round where I see the beach and maybe it's like, it doesn't dip below 60 degrees, will be great. But then like wintertime is maybe to come back and see family and
Yeah.
experience that seasonal change because you kind of get in the mood. I feel like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing like, I mean, at least me growing up as a kid, I remember White Christmas is getting so excited, getting the spirit of the holidays. It just really sets a different mood, I feel like,
Yeah.
and
I,
doing
I
that.
I totally agree. And it's interesting. They say people who prefer to live by the beach that it's really good for people who are serotonin deficient, and that people who like the mountains are really good for people who are acetylcholine deficient.
Right,
I thought that was
right.
really interesting. Yeah. So some people like are more
Mhm.
drawn to one versus the other, and they say that it does have to do with
Yeah,
brain
yeah,
chemistry.
yeah. Yeah, that's something to think about for sure. I want to go ahead and dive into the
Yeah.
topic of
Good.
the episode. And, this morning we were chatting and I'm like, okay, what the hell are we going to talk about
Yeah.
today? And, I'm one of those people that it's like, I don't think it's a matter of trying to figure out what to talk about. It's like, what would people want to hear about? And you actually brought this up, integrity
Yeah.
or lies. And that's really what I wanted to cover in this episode because I actually put out a post on my Facebook profile that what's really interesting is that it's kind of having this trickling effect where people are slowly engaging with it over days
Yeah.
because I think people are like absorbing the context of it and what it really means. And the reality of things is, in this digital world that we live in with social media and everything with news and politics that's going on, I feel like there's so many lies, so many
Yeah.
lies,
So many lines.
and it makes me wonder. So, I actually looked up, the definition of integrity because I'm like, okay,
Oh, I like it.
let's yeah, so like, let's go let's go to basics here, right? And let's see what is integrity because I think too many people scrutinize the meaning of integrity, right? And by definition, integrity is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles, moral uprightness, and the state of being whole and undivided.
Mm,
Now, there's so much gray in this, honestly, because I think honesty is important, right? I mean, whatever you do in life, in business, it's important to be honest,
mhm.
and always tell the truth, right? But I think where things have gotten scrutinized is people like to make their own versions of the truth, their own versions of honesty. And I'm not by no means, and I'm gonna talk about it here in a little bit, is morals and beliefs because everyone's entitled to it. But why do people choose to tell lies over, retaining their integrity? Like
Mhm.
that's a mind-boggling thing. Would love to hear your thoughts on that because I know you're a huge proponent for the psychological and political aspect of that. But why do people do that?
I think there's a lot of reasons. So, as human
Mhm.
beings, we're wired for survival. That's, first and foremost. So, we tend to do things that we think are going to advance, our
Right,
safety, and increase, our safety. So there's a couple of different things I think that are going on. So one is the social approval. Um, so as human beings, we are social creatures, and if you look back through, primordial man, we were more like pack animals. If you were
right,
ostracized or left out of the herd, your actual life was in danger, jeopardy, because you might not be able to eat. If you weren't part of the tribe, if somebody hunted and you didn't, then you might not literally survive being left out, because there was a tribal element. And so that is part of why even today
yeah.
modern man sometimes feels physically assaulted by emotional attacks
I
because
think that's where one thing that you mentioned is being part of the tribe is that I
Mhm.
think that's where a little bit of FOMO comes in. I know a lot of people talk about FOMO on the internet, and I shit you not. For I think until a couple of years ago, I'm like, what the fuck is FOMO? So I actually looked it up, and I'm like, really? Like, there's such thing as FOMO? Like,
Mm.
but you're absolutely right. I think people want to be socially accepted, so they
Yeah.
choose to tell lies, whether it's to themselves or to the general public,
So
because they want that social acceptance.
exactly. So I think a lot of times people will tell lies for, to be either accepted, to receive approval, validation, and to sometimes it's omitting truth or not. Their actions are dishonest as a way of
Right.
either fitting into a crowd or as a way of not offending. People do that often. I think it was Plutarch who said, a real friend is someone who dares to, I'm paraphrasing, but dares to tell you the truth even when it's uncomfortable. That a real
Right.
friend wouldn't, tell you a lie just to appease you. That's not a friend.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think that, but I think we've lost a lot of that element today. People want
Mhm.
to be, for lack of a better phrase, political correctness is all about this. Don't dare offend somebody. Better to mince the truth just a bit in order to soften the blow.
Yep.
And I think that's where a lot of lies do stem. I think they stem from this, not wanting to offend, not wanting to hurt people. Then there's the pathological, more sociopathic kind of element of it, where people lie literally just to further their own gain. Um, and
Yep.
that's completely devoid of integrity. That is solely for unscrupulous type of intentions.
You
So yeah,
know,
I think there's a couple of things at play when people are lying.
yeah. Yeah, and I want to hit up on some of those a little bit more, is because, first of all, I have to say that probably when I was younger, I was one of those people because I wanted to be socially accepted. So, it's kind of like I followed the herd, so to speak. It's like whatever the herd did, is what I did or what I chose to do. So if I needed to tell a lie just to be socially accepted, then I would tell a lie. But
Right.
then I feel like, as the saying goes, is you get wiser as you go to get older, or something along
Yeah.
those lines, right? That you mature, hopefully, as you get older. And I
Hopefully.
realized that, I needed to become more comfortable with making my own decisions, doing
Right.
my own research, being able to come up with my own choices.
Yeah.
Whether people liked it or disliked it. And, I think these are the repercussions a lot of people are afraid of, is just that,
Yeah.
if you say something on Facebook, if you say something on Twitter or any social media platform, is what is going to be people's reaction? How are you going to handle, someone's negative comment, right?
Right.
Like is that going to emotionally hurt you? And are you afraid to be hurt that way? And I
Hmm.
think
Yeah.
most people are. They're afraid to be emotionally hurt. And instead of being integral and being honest and truthful and really adhering to those morals and beliefs that I know they strongly believe in, right,
Yeah.
is they would rather tell a lie, or they would rather blend in with the rest of the herd. And so I think, whether it's, in your personal life, whether it's in business, whether it's in politics, I mean, I know there's a lot of that in politics. I feel like
A
people
lot
can't
of that
choose
in politics.
sides. Yeah. People
Yeah.
can't choose sides, and or they're afraid to choose sides.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple more things I want to address. One is I think there is actually there's a loss of morality in our society. I definitely see it in this country. We're becoming more and more secular, as a whole. But I actually see it globally as well. I think there's a true loss of morality. And if you don't, I think it was Churchill who said, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah.
So I think that is definitely a huge component. But another part of it is, and politics is a great example of this, is that people are afraid of what are the ramifications if they are to be true to themselves. And
Right.
if they stand up for what's right. And, are they willing to be that lone soldier, who will fight for the truth, fight for what's right, even if other people, won't back them. And, in politics, it's a lot about like making deals and, that's what the saying is. That's what people always
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
walk across the aisle and, make deals. But the reality is that there's no compromising on the truth. The truth is the truth, and we've had these
Right.
conversations about perspectives and reality, and people can have a different perspective, and people may have different opinions, but the truth is still the truth. And if you
Right.
know something to be objectively true, bending on it just a little bit is just dishonest. That's not
Yeah.
compromise. That's dishonesty. And I think that that's where the confusion is. And I do think it stems from a lack of morality. And I think integrity is becoming more and more rare. It's in short supply these days. Yeah.
Right.
And I think that stems a lot from cowardice. It's a lack of courage. And, I think courage comes from having conviction. You know that you can withstand what comes your way because you believe so strongly in what it is that you're standing for.
I
And you
agree.
can get lost with that.
I agree. One thing that I wanted to touch upon that you said that I've noticed is that I feel like disagreeing because you stand firmly by your morals, by your beliefs, the truth, the honesty, it can obviously have repercussions, because it can have repercussions. And I think those repercussions are usually happen from the people that are closest to you. Like I know, let's take social media, for example, is this, people that you feel close to. I've actually had that happen multiple times. It's where, I've had people that thought they were friends, whether they were in real life or people that I've just known for a while on social media. And, we've just had very candid conversations, very personal conversations to where like we've been very open. And then when you disagree on something because you're speaking out your truth and you feel that you need to be integral, right? And that's what I try to do is this, that, okay, I feel like I need to be integral. I need to tell the truth. I need to be honest. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But then when that disagreement happens, and I think we talked about this in the previous episode, is I think people choose to shut down that argument before the argument actually happens. And I think that's what happens a lot of times, right? Is this that people are unwilling to discuss it and say, well, why do you feel that this is the truth? Right? Let's talk about it. Let's extrapolate it. Let's present factual information. I'm one of those people, in fact, and I am one of those people that I love factual information. I'm all about the truth. I'm all about honesty. I'm all about integrity. But I think too many people do not understand the real meaning of integrity.
Yeah.
To where they make up their own version because, of, being deceitful to others or personal gain. We see this on Facebook every day.
Yeah.
Every day. People tell bullshit just because they think that it's somehow going to give them an advantage in business or a bigger following or more comments or more likes.
Yep.
And it's like, it's really, and I think that's where social giants have kind of figured out that, you know what, like, let people just kill each other. Let them just like go at it because they can't be integral. And I think as human beings, it's that social component that really creates that friction, right? That you mentioned is just that, to be honest or to be dishonest,
Yeah.
So
there's a part of the definition of integrity. Certainly honesty is a part of it. But at the end of it, when you read it, it's about being whole, right? So that's why when I say that there's no compromising on the truth, is because it's whole, right? You can't bend it. You can't break off just a little piece of it and then think that that's integrity. No, integrity is staying steadfast to your morals, to your beliefs, to the truth. But personal integrity is staying true to what is true for you, and your morals, your beliefs, and what you know to be truth. And when you're talking about the social component of it, my problem with it is that people may think that they're ingratiating themselves to, to a crowd or to their audience or to customers, fill in the blank, whatever the list goes on. But when you compromise your integrity, you break a piece of that social fabric. That trust gets broken. So I think the part, and I think we're seeing that, politics is a really good example of that. We're seeing that right now. There's supposed to be an integrity of how our system works. We have documents that very clearly delineate the process of our governing protocols. And, right now that integrity is being questioned. And so there's that social construct that is not reliable. People are doubting it because it's been broken. So, while they may think that they were, furthering their own gain, whatever, and I'm not privy to why certain people have, become devoid of integrity or have, broken that trust. I don't know if they were bribed or, corrupted somehow or threatened or, or just wanted to appease, I don't know. I have my thoughts and suspicions, but I can't assessment without, I'm not privy to those facts. But what I do know is that it is being questioned based on the actions. And so that questions the whole social fabric.
Yeah, and I actually want to go back to that because I would love to hear your thoughts. Talking about SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, because I'm very curious about that. But one thing I wanted to actually mention about integrity real quick, because it got me thinking, is so I'm someone who's been in the digital marketing space for over 2 decades now, and now more than ever, I feel like I'm seeing so much snake oil in this space. Because it's so accessible. So many people can get into it. I mean, you just need to be a little bit tech savvy and you can be the next guru overnight practically, or label yourself the next guru. Now, speaking of integrity, one thing that I personally practice is that, I believe that the people, whatever it is that you're selling, whether you have a service or a product, as long as you're likable and trustworthy and you give value, then in any form or fashion that covers those three, people are going to appeal to you, and integrity is a huge part of that. So when we do this show or any content that I push out, I try to be truthful and honest, speak from the heart. And what I've discovered is that it's not for everybody, and it's not going to be for everybody, but it is for somebody, one person, somebody. And this was a struggle, I think, for me, at least on the business side of things, for 6 years ago when I started out, is just that because I wanted to appeal to everybody. I realized that, no, you don't need to appeal to everybody. Just be integral, be yourself, attract other like-minded people and build trust and offer value. And I think I get so irked about when I see like the hard salesy posts that come across on Facebook. And like buy my course. On
chalkboard for me. I actually cringe. I can't. I get so, and I don't even have to be like. It's not even intellectual. Like I feel it viscerally. I'm like, oh, I can't.
I actually had to remind myself. So this actually, believe it or not, like I said, I cringe very much like you when I see those hard salesy posts from other marketers, especially buy my course and do this and this. And yesterday I got to thinking about it because I saw one actually, and then and this is, I think, a leap for me because I didn't used to do this. So I saw it and I'm like, there's plenty of room for everybody. There's plenty to go around. Don't let these cringy posts affect your mood and energy. There's zero reasons. You've got so much going on for yourself, and then really thinking about that integrity and honesty and truth and relationships and all of that. So speaking of integrity, I wanted to bring that up because it's a huge part, of my business methodology specifically, because I believe in that. It's important to be honest, to be upfront, to be truthful. And so moving on to, I do want to hear your thoughts on SCOTUS.
I want to interject on that just very briefly. But I think there is I wrote my thesis on existential authenticity, and I think authenticity and integrity are linked. They're not 100% the same. I think there are nuanced differences between the two. But one of the things that is actually very relevant in both and to what you're speaking to is knowing thyself. And I think that is also part of why people lack integrity. A lot of people don't know who they are, and they're so busy trying to appeal externally. They're looking to be reinforced externally. And again, we're social creatures. We all do that. We all need validation. We all want to be liked. That's human. But first and foremost, you have to know yourself. And I think that it's really hard to have integrity if you don't know who you are. You're not. How can you be authentic if you don't know what's authentic for you? So
That's
I think
really
that is actually,
and actually, I'm glad you said that because I was on Clubhouse probably a couple of weeks ago, and I ended up getting on stage, and I actually haven't been much on Clubhouse, but well, since a couple of weeks ago, but I was on stage with some 9-figure earners, and it was a business coaching thing, and so I got on stage, and they asked me to do my pitch, basically, and I did my pitch, and it got shut down. And like just totally ripped apart, and one of the 9-figure earners was like, no, I wouldn't do business with you. And I kind of got to thinking about that after a while. And then I saw a post on Instagram from Damon John that said basically, embrace vulnerability, embrace your story, tell people how you got to where you are, tell them about your struggles. That's literally the essence of my human-centric business, human marketing. And so like suddenly there were like these polar opposites, it's like this 9-figure earner says like, no, I'm not going to buy from you because your pitch sucks. And then Damon John is actually saying the polar opposite. He's saying like, just be yourself, know thyself, and I agree with you. Most people don't know themselves because they're trying to appeal to John Q. Public. And they're so worried about that to the point where they have sleepless nights because someone didn't like their post or someone didn't comment or, someone said a bad thing that really got them thinking. It's like, no, know thyself. That's literally all that matters. So that was a really good point that you made because, every time I've questioned whether or not, at least from a business standpoint, whether or not I'm going in the right direction, then it's like, yeah, you are, because look at the things you've accomplished. So don't self-doubt yourself.
Exactly.
I think, and I think a lot of people do self-doubt themselves.
I think it's fine to doubt yourself. I think that's human. I think that's part of the process. You can doubt, you can ask questions, but knowing yourself will fortify you in continuing your path. And I think that's the important part.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Let's talk about SCOTUS because I want to hear, and I actually want to talk about this because there's so much going on in politics right now. And I know you're a huge proponent for that. So let's fill us in. What is happening? Because I know this morning when we're chatting on Messenger, you said, I'm just fired up about what's going on with SCOTUS right now. I'm like, Courtney, what's going on? Like, you seem all fired up about this. So fill us in. What is happening right now, and why should people take stronger interest into this?
Well, I don't know that fired up is quite the right word, the right words, but I'm not at all surprised. I am incredibly disappointed. I think, so, without going too far down rabbit holes, there have been a lot of people who have had, kind of what I call hopium. They have lots of theories on things that are going on. And, I have not subscribed to any of that. Not that I don't believe that hope is important, but I just have not been, a proponent of some of these notions that have been tossed around.
Sure.
What I have been interested in is these court cases, not because I was all that hopeful, but because they are a part of the constitutional process. And for me, they were kind of the, one of the last pillars of hope. And there was some sort of possibility, but they were also a major indication of where we are at in this country and where the constitutional republic stands today. And SCOTUS making the choice not to hear these cases today again is incredibly disappointing.
Sure.
Because they're not letting the case be heard, and that as we were talking about on an individual level, personally, we've had a lot of conversations about shutting down the argument, about shutting down the discourse, right? Well, this is the ultimate example of that. This is, no, I'm not even going to hear your evidence. We're just going to shut down the case. We're dismissing it, saying that it's moot. They were saying that, it's irrelevant at this point in time.
Right.
Well, why is it irrelevant at this point in time? It's because you played the slow roll game and you pushed it off and, procrastinated to the point where now we are so far past the election. And it's not true. It's actually, that's a false statement to say that it's irrelevant or that it's moot at this point, because we are still within that 60-day period. There are still within the purview of the, pursuant to the Constitution, still viable paths that need to be, that I believe should be addressed and assessed. And, more importantly, what kind of a precedence is it setting moving forward? If they choose not to hear these cases, then they're essentially setting a precedent for things that were blatantly unconstitutional. Some of these states changed the Constitution after the fact. So they're setting a precedent that that's okay, that we can just make laws as we go and change things when it's politically expedient for us to do so. And I think that is incredibly dangerous. I think that is it's a blatant violation of our Constitution. It puts our Constitution in jeopardy. And that's all we really have. I mean, that's what makes this country unique, is our Constitution. And if we dismiss it and we ignore it and we continue to violate it and mock it in the capacity that we have, especially over this past year and currently. And I think it also shows the courts to be, again, I can't prove, I don't know what's going on inside the system. I'm not there. I have suspicions, but I'm not going to sit here and speculate. But certainly we can make a lot of assessments based on results, right? And the results prove, or at least allude to, corruption. And
I think so. A couple of things is you have reason to believe, and I think one of the things I heard you say in the beginning is, and this is definitely above my pay grade, is how does SCOTUS, what's the protocol that SCOTUS utilizes to discredit, a viable case that's presented, right? Because I think that's what I heard you say in the beginning, is just that, they're ultimately discredited and said that this was an invalid argument, right? Without actually.
No, that's not what they said. They didn't hear the case. So they're saying that, they won't hear the case. And
right, and that's what I meant. Right. That's what I meant, is discrediting, because they didn't even allow it to be presented. Yeah.
That's why I have such issue with it, is because they're not even allowing the cases to be heard. They're just, this is the, on the grand scale, this is the, the manifestation of these personal conversations that are being shut down, right? Like we keep talking about shutting down the discourse. This is the ultimate example of that. They're not even letting the conversation be had. And for the job of the Supreme Court is to rule on the constitutionality. This is not a criminal case. They're not, determining whether there was fraud, whether there wasn't fraud. This is just based on the constitutionality. So to not even hear it, and there is a very strong case, in my opinion, for the unconstitutionality in several of these states for what happened.
The case that we're referring to here is that you're talking about the recent election, correct? Specifically, where the investigations around voter fraud and all of that, which I think I have to agree with you, is just that it has to be heard, but it sounds like it was pushed off without even given the opportunity, because
Yep.
Isn't that what SCOTUS is supposed to do on the highest of levels? Is
Yep.
basically they are the supreme authority and Supreme Court, ultimately, the supreme authority to be able to take the time, and I feel like taxpayers
Yes.
pay for that too, is just to be able to investigate that, right?
Well, it's yeah. So I really want to be clear. We've got three branches, and the Supreme Court, their job is to adjudicate. They adjudicate the constitutionality. They are not. They're not the legislative. They're not the executive. So they're not investigating. That's not their job. Like that should have been the job of the Department of Justice or the FBI. That they're investigative agencies. The Supreme Court is supposed to adjudicate the constitutionality of a case. That's their job. So to not hear the case and determine the constitutionality, that sets a precedent moving forward, because whether it was constitutional or not, the precedent sets it sets a precedent moving forward that we can point to and say, well, now this proves that this can happen again, because you determine. So I as a philosophy major, and one of the things the essentialists talk about, Sartre talks about this all the time. Sartre, he would talk about like how inaction is an action. Not making a choice is still a choice.
Right.
You can't.
Right.
A lot of people like to. And this is where I say that it is a lack of integrity, and it stems from cowardice. Is, oh, I'm just going to pass. Like, let me just sit out on this.
Yeah.
And then they say they can't be blamed. They can't be responsible. They can't be held responsible. They're not culpable. But that's not true, because your decision to step out of, the case, or your choice not to take action, that in itself is an action. And I think that's what the court is doing right now. Like, this is too messy. I don't want to get my hands dirty. And so they've just completely, obfuscated by turning down the to hear it.
One thing I wanted to say about that is, because I agree with this, is I think there's sort of a bit of the scarcity mindset, at the Supreme Court level, like you said, that afraid to get hands too messy. But it's kind of like, you are in that position. That's what you do. Ultimately, that's your job. So if you don't want to get too messy, then and that even trickles down even further to when you look at the people that are involved, right?
Sure.
And then even more so than that is so these people are supposed to follow the U.S. Constitution, right? As we talked about, but I feel like they manipulate the Constitution to serve individual needs, or to serve the needs of whatever, as opposed to following the Constitution. I think where things really get gray is just that, again, this is above my pay grade, is that, who ultimately makes that executive decision. And if so, then why is that person, in that position, right? And why not change that person to someone who, is willing to embrace the Constitution? Because I know a lot of people question the Constitution because there is gray areas, obviously, in that, but there's also a lot of truth in there too, right?
I'm going to interject there. I don't think it's all that gray. I think the Constitution is pretty explicit. Our founding fathers were incredibly brilliant, and they really crafted a document it's a fixed document. And I think, so it's not that it's gray. What's gray is people's perception on how the Constitution should be upheld. There's a group of people and a philosophy that believes it's a living document that can be interpreted in any sort of fashion to serve their agenda. And there are people who believe that it was written in a specific manner and that it should be upheld as such. And I am more of the latter. I subscribe to the belief that it is a fixed document. This is not something that needs to be evolved and changed and written. The process of changing the Constitution and making an amendment is a very elaborate process, and it is conducted that way for a reason. It's because it's not a living document. You actually have to go and change it, and there is a whole process to do that. And it's a very elaborate, drawn out process. And the reason for that is because it's not living. It's not just like interpret any way you want today, for whatever you feel like, for whatever your needs are today. And this goes back to this notion of, is truth absolute, right? There is an object.
Right.
Those words are written for a very specific, precise way for a reason. And the job of the Supreme Court is to adjudicate if something is in accordance with that document. So that's where, things could be gray. There is an interpretation of, does something align with the words of in the Constitution? But
and
the Constitution itself is not gray.
Yeah, well, and again, I want to go back because I think it was a poor way of explaining it, but that's exactly what I was saying, is that it was a misconception of the U.S. Constitution. And then I believe that, if the Constitution should be changed and an amendment needs to be presented, it does need to go through an elaborate process, because I think that, from our founding forefathers, right, when the U.S. Constitution was written, is that it is a fixed document, right? But it also is a document that changes, I think, because people change, I think, or our beliefs change, or
this is where I'm pretty strong on this. I think they wrote it with the understanding that human nature does not change. Human nature, through the thousands and thousands of years, it has been pretty consistent. Certainly, like, technology changes, society changes. Really, I think the biggest change is technology. But human beings don't change. The human nature is human nature. And they knew that. They understood that. And that is why they created the system of checks and balances that we have. And my biggest concern is that those checks and balances are being eroded. I think they have been for a very long time, but we're really seeing it come to the surface now. And of those checks and balances is at jeopardy, you have tyranny. All of our forefathers said that. And I think that is what we're starting to see.
No, I agree with you. It's just that, and I'm all about checks and balances. And again, this is why I'm not a part of SCOTUS, and this is why I'm not having into politics, is because, I believe that is a fixed document. I believe, humans, our patterns, we just don't change. I believe in that. It's human nature, right? Human nature is human nature. It's how we were designed. And this is why, again, but it's really interesting because, and I think this is why there's so many issues, at the Supreme Court level, is because, there's a lot of corruption, misconception, misinterpretation, lack of enforcement, just so many different things. And I don't know. I mean, a lot of it might be intentional, but some of it I think is probably unintentional too, because of human nature, I think, because we do make mistakes as humans, but at the same time,
we make mistakes, but how many times can somebody make a mistake, and then how many coincidences can occur before you question the coincidence?
The integrity, right? I agree, absolutely. When it becomes repetitive, I agree with you. That's when you start really questioning and say, okay, is this person really like doing this unintentionally, if they've done it 3, 4, 5 times,
right,
or they're doing it intentionally? Because, making a mistake once, okay, that can be understandable because it's human nature. But repetitive patterns, that's where I agree with you. This is why I think it's important to extrapolate this, since we're talking about integrity, is this, that when repetitive patterns, become evident, then it's like, no, SCOTUS is doing this intentionally. That's where I agree with you. And they're doing it for, that's the big question mark, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I can speculate all day,
Right.
I don't have again, I'm not privy to that information, so I can't make a concrete, conclusive analysis on that. But I certainly can say that the results point to there being corruption. There's just, to me, I don't see another viable answer to what's occurring.
I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm not even, having the politics, but like, if I look at politics in the last 25 years, right? So, we immigrated here in 1994. I was 14 years old. So that was, 26 years ago now.
Yeah.
Is I feel like whether it's the left side or the right side, there's always corruption, always. And I honestly, I'm one of those people that's like, and that's why I think I have chosen not to immerse myself so much, is because when there's a new candidate that's running, whether it's at the state level or local government or president, right? Is this that they make such huge promises, and you're sitting there and it's like, dude, this is bullshit. Like this is such a far stretch that like and I like to be optimistic. Don't get me wrong, but
So
like there's a
I
difference.
yeah, sorry, go on.
No, go
I
ahead.
just gonna say, I think this is why Trump was so popular. He
Yeah,
was one of the first presidents who really, whether you like him or not, he upheld
yeah,
his promises. I mean, there really isn't a promise that he didn't deliver. He said he was going to do something, and I will tell you honestly, for myself, I wasn't, in the primaries, he wasn't my guy, and I had a lot of reasons for. I didn't trust him. I thought that he's a
yeah,
lifelong Democrat. I knew he personally was very good friends with the Clintons. I had this whole like theory that they were kind of
yeah,
two sides of the same coin. They were working together either way,
yeah,
and what turned for me was that within the first few months, like really in the first few weeks, he started to deliver on all the things he was promising, and I was so surprised, and
yeah.
I was the first to say I'm totally wrong. This man, lives by his word, and again, whether you like him or not, that's not really something you can deny. The things he said
Yeah.
he'd do, he did.
Well, I think and this is where I think a lot of people were misconstrued. Is just that they saw Trump as divorced, married multiple times. Like they saw the materialistic things. I feel like as opposed to like you said, is this what did he really do? What did he accomplish? What were his real fulfillments, and what are my sources for getting this information too? Because that's
Yeah,
where I think a lot of people were misled, and I agree with you. And if there's one thing that I've probably done a terrible job at, is this that really really diving in deep to see like, okay, what did this guy really do? Besides like because let's face it, when you're in the spotlight, you probably know this because you've been in the spotlight, right? Is this like there's like people will try to bring up the worst in you,
sure.
like they'll say that you've done the worst capable things, and
Again,
you're
it's human nature,
inhuman.
right? It's a guarantee. There's some like things
It's
in life that
corruption.
we can count on,
Yeah,
and
it's
people in the public
sabotage.
eye will be tarnished. Yeah, people
Exactly.
try to dig up the worst about them. Yeah,
Exactly. I mean, like imagine like a Hollywood star, right? It's like, I mean, when they're on the uprise, can you imagine what that probably feels like? Is that like
right.
suddenly people are exposing things that you're like, how in the hell did I find this? And it's like to start judging you immediately
Or they make
based
it
on
up. I mean,
yeah, or
that's
make it up.
talking about lies, right? There's
Exactly.
a lot of that as well, where
Yeah.
people just blatantly make up things that
Yep.
aren't true and fabricate stories
Yeah.
to paint somebody in a particular light.
Yeah, yeah, and I know we're coming up here on the top of the hour, and I know we talked about so many good things. Talking about integrity or lies, and we talked about SCOTUS also, which I always admire your psychological and political take on things. Because, and by the way, for those of you that haven't subscribed to Courtney's podcast, I'm going to throw in a plug: the Courtney Turner podcast. Make sure you go listen to it. She has some phenomenal guests, and she gets into some very, very deep conversations that let's just say are definitely worth listening. So you can find it everywhere. And Courtney, I always enjoy this.
Thank
You bring such
you.
a fresh, breath of fresh air, I should say, to the conversation, and I think that is important to have because it's different perspective that people need to really, absorb, whether they choose to acknowledge it or not. I think it's important to present that information. So I want to thank you. This was a really, really good one. Speaking of, integrity and lies and what's happening in the digital space and politics. And then at the end of the day is, it's draw your own conclusions, do your own research, and dive in deeper, because I think it's important. But always, always adhere to your integrity. That's really important. So thank you, everyone. This was another episode of the RAS Project with my amazing sidekick, Courtney Turner, as well. And we'll be back. The RAS Project Overdrive episode will be on Wednesday. We'll be back Friday with another live episode. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and have an amazing day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.